Welcome to the station, Kentucky's Conservative Outpost. This is the program that is the only place you can really find news and commentary from a conservative perspective in the state of Kentucky and the city of Louisville. So we're excited to bring this to you. And tonight we have a great program. We're going to talk about the governor's race. And we have a governor's election, or election for the governor next year. And Kentucky has this odd cycle where we have a governor's race in the off years, and the good thing about it is it really allows you to focus on that campaign. Who's running? We're not distracted by who's running for senator, who's running for president, et cetera. It's just who's running for governor, and also in some other statewide offices. And tonight we have two guests, and actually three. I'm joined by Evan Belcher, our assistant here.
Hello.
And then also on Skype, we have Lee Watts with Patriot, and you might know Lee from his YouTube channel and his program that airs here on WBNA. If you haven't seen it, you should tune into it. It's very well produced, very well thought out, and it's very entertaining as well. So it's great stuff. So Lee, we're excited to have you on. Then we have Jim Waters from the Bluegrass Institute, and our favorite co-host, but he's co-hosting through Skype tonight. So thanks for being on board with this.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So the governor's race, it's basically about a year from now, maybe 11 months from now. And so I guess, of course, this is Beshear's first term. He could run again, and he could win again, because I think we have a two-term limit for governors in the state. And so he's going to be running for re-election, I'm sure. And so the question is, how has he done? I mean, how his first tenure played out, and so I want to pose that to both of y'all. Lee, how's Beshear done in general? Just as a governor, outside of the partisan perspectives. I mean, just as a governor, day to day, kitchen, items type, perspective. I mean, has he made the trains run on time? Has he been effective in that sense? I don't know.
Well, let's look at him in really five different metrics that we can see on how the state is running right now. First of all, one of the big issues is security, the crime rates. That's one of the national issues that Democrats don't like to talk about. So how's he done on the level of security? We've seen Louisville has been burned to the ground in a lot of areas during his time. We've seen there's been a great departure of a lot of our police officers because they're not getting the support from the governor that they really should. And you're seeing a lot of commercials for the state police having to recruit people for. So I would say on like a security issue that he'd have to get a failing grade. We talk about really an economic issue. How's the economy now versus the way it was during the Bevin administration? The economy was better in every single metric. When we look at really constitutionality, one of the first things that he did during the pandemic was close down travel to other states, which is unconstitutional. Not doing well there. We talk about the cause of liberty. One of the first things he did was violate religious liberty, closing the churches down, which again, the court said it's unconstitutional. You're breaking the law. As far as working with the legislature repeatedly has talked about how he ignores them and he treats them like a child. And when he talk about Kentucky values, whether he shows the values on life and marriage, in each one of these 5 or 6 different metrics, we see that he is falling short of really what the average Kentuckian, I believe, stands for and sees as a priority. And because of that, I believe he will be a one-term governor.
Wow, well said. Well, so Jim, what are your thoughts on that? Do you echo those sentiments?
Well, I think that Governor Beshear is most vulnerable in the way he handled the pandemic, the fact that he sent out state police troopers to take down license plates in church parking lots. That's just
that was ridiculous
in Kentucky of all places as well. That just didn't work. So I do think that he's most vulnerable in that area. The question will be whether people, how long memories are, and by the time we get to the gubernatorial election, what happens between now and then also, I think, will have a play. I mean, we're talking about another year. So,
right.
So it's going to be up to the Republican opponent, I think, whoever it is. They need to do an effective job of finding those areas that he's weakest in and going after those. I think he's going to get some I think he's going to get some high marks for some areas. You know, the way he handled the tornado and the flooding. I think he's going to get high marks for that. And I'm speaking strictly now, as you ask about how he's done with the kind of the kitchen table issues. And we have had some big economic growth announcements since he became governor, but the credit for that really doesn't go to him as much as it does to the change in policy that we had made with bringing right to work to Kentucky and getting rid of prevailing wage mandates. So, you know, every politician, he wants to take credit for that. I find it interesting that he wanted to take credit for having the state's biggest rainy day fund in our history, and yet he was the one originally wanting to spend all those dollars that we put in there. So,
That's right. Wow.
So, but just strictly in terms of this election right now, I mean, I think a lot of this is going to depend on who the Republican opponent is and what their strategy is and how that nomination goes. But, you know, Governor Beshear, by the way, has filed to run. Just in the last few days, he filed his papers with the Secretary of State. So he is in.
He's definitely running. Okay.
And he will be. And I think it's a mistake to underestimate his political ability. He's demonstrated he knows how to campaign, and he will do. He will do that. He's never really been one to allow principles to get in the way of a political campaign. So he'll probably say just about anything to advance his political career.
Well,
so,
and he won. I mean, this has traditionally been a red state in the past few decades, and statewide offices such as Rand Paul and Mitch McConnell have gone Republican, but yet he won as a Democrat governor. And
well, the statewide offices as well, the constitutional offices, the state auditor, Secretary of State, Attorney General, all Republicans that won handily in their races. So Kentuckians want a governor who is accessible, who they feel is concerned about, who's empathetic, and who listens. And I think a conservative can win, but I think we ran into some problems with that with Governor Bevin's reelection efforts, and I just think there were some decisions made there as well that hurt. So at this point in time, I know this is not going to be popular, but I think Governor Beshear has to be considered a favorite right now, depending on, of course, what happens in the next year.
Yeah. Okay.
I would have to echo that because you cannot. First of all, he doesn't have an opponent yet. He's got 12 different ones running against him, and while he technically has two Democratic opponents, we know he's going to get the nomination. So that gives him an advantage that he can be the focus on one side. Plus, we cannot underestimate the value of what I consider his propaganda hour that he had for about a year and a half. And that you cannot underestimate the value of that. So it'll really be up to the Republican side to do the proper messaging, to focus in, to really tie him to the Biden policies and failures. I think that will be key. And we'll see who's able to articulate that the best. I do think Andy's going to have a much harder race than he had the first time. During the first election against Bevin, he won by supposedly 5,000 votes. But from the day he was inaugurated till today, the Democratic Party of Kentucky has lost more than 65,000 registered voters. And the Republican Party of Kentucky has gained more than 125,000 registered voters.
Wow.
So that 20 times over, his lead is gone.
That's fascinating. So just demographics and registrations alone might say that the race is won. What are some of the key issues, though? Okay, so he's been in office for one term, and the issues of the last election are different from the issues of this election. So what are the key issues that both candidates will be running on in the general?
I think the whole inflation issue, the cost of gasoline and groceries, those are kitchen table issues, and people tend to really gravitate to no matter what all the political noise is, it tends to be, am I better off than I was 4 years ago, which has been a famous refrain in the past several elections. And I think it depends on how people answer that question, too. I think is going to depend a lot on how Beshear does. It's really an interesting political dynamic because here we are in one of the reddest states in America, and yet Governor Beshear was ranked like one of the top governors in terms of popularity, and being a Democrat. So So it's going to be up again, like Lee said, and I totally agree. I think it's going to be a huge job, messaging job, and campaigning job and I think inspiring people. Just because the registrations have changed, I do think that gives the Republicans some help. But just because of that alone, if they're depending on that alone, I think that's a mistake and fatal mistake because people in Kentucky tend to be independent minded and they don't like being told what to do and who to vote for. So I think that will also have a play in that. On the crime issue, it'll be interesting too to see. And Lee, you mentioned that I think it'll be interesting to see how much of that is laid at Bashir's feet versus local leadership's feet. I know they did get a pay increase for state troopers, so that will be something that he can also trumpet. But I agree, this daily infomercial that the governor was able to do. I mean, how can you compete against that in terms of airtime? So that definitely is. He came in. He's a polite person. He's a likable person in many ways, and I do think that does have to be considered. And so, if we're really being honest about this, I think that's going to be tough. And the Republicans need somebody who inspires people. I think somebody who has. Attorney General Cameron has a powerful personal story, and he needs to tell that and use that to inspire people. And I think some of the other candidates, Auditor Harmon, even though, he doesn't have, probably is not considered to be in a top tier maybe, we don't know at this point, but, he's a great storyteller on the campaign trail and he can really tap into that as well. So somebody like that who could be a dark horse for the Republicans. We saw that happen with Matt Bevin before. He came really from behind, if you will, to win that race. So right. I think it'll be really interesting.
Yeah, it should be. So I think Bashir definitely has the mask-wearing soccer mom vote because they were
and not everybody dislikes soccer, by the way.
No, exactly right. But I think they had their full of Andy there for about a year there every day on television. So Lee, what do you think the key issues are here? Crime, obviously, inflation. Anything you want to add to that?
Well, again, Jim hit it very correctly. It's the things that you discuss when you're around the kitchen table. How much does gas cost? How much do groceries cost? And as we can see, that Bashir's been pushing the Biden policies, and it would be well advised for the Republican candidate to tie Biden to Bashir as closely as he or she possibly can. And of course, then you have the more I consider the politically paying attention crowd, which is the liberty issues. And on that issue, he has just been atrocious. So right. I do believe that while he'll have an early lead, I think if they got somebody in there who can communicate those things, who will come across as a better answer, that they'll do well. We don't need somebody come across as angry. That's been tried. That doesn't work. Bashir likes to come across as your buddy and as your friend. I think one of the key things is to separate him from the teachers union. That was really what pushed him to victory in the last time. And whoever the candidate is, I hope that they will pick up the very first State of the Commonwealth address that Bashir ever gave. Remember, this is 2 or 3 months before COVID even hits the states. And in that campaign address, he underfunded the teachers' pensions. But I think it was $85 million.
Wow.
And that's something that really needs to be hammered and brought up. I saved all those articles, and we'll probably be reposting those as we get closer to the election.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, if you can drive a wedge there, that'd be a huge piece. Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, education definitely also is a big issue here, and Lee is right about the influence of the teachers unions in getting Andy Bashir elected. There's no question about that. He really rode that wave. And
can we make?
We'll see how that plays out this time. I think he's still going to be their favorite. But the question will be the grassroots and parents who were unhappy with the way that schools were locked down and kids were locked out, and now we're seeing what the mental health consequences of a lot of that are, and some of the other collateral issues. So
that's right.
We'll see how that plays out.
Do you think school choice will be a key issue in the election? I mean, can we
well,
make it an
I
issue?
think safety in schools will be a big issue as well. School choice will be. I think it will be because we're going to get a court ruling here the Supreme Court's term is over, and they're going to have to issue a ruling here within the next couple of weeks on the school choice lawsuit. And so I think and I think the legislature's going to hopefully going to get some direction from the court on that as well, on what they can do in the upcoming session to address and to expand school choice in Kentucky. But I do think it'll be an issue, and Beshear, of course, has been very solidly opposed. He vetoed school choice bills. His vetoes have been overridden, but he did veto them, and the Republicans have struggled in some cases to override those. So I think a clear message from voters that we want school choice would be helpful in this next election.
Okay, well said. Okay, so we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back and take a look at the Republican candidates. We have about 7, at least the top 7 Republican candidates that we can review, and we have some of their campaign videos. So we'll do that when we come back, and I'd love to get your opinions on that when we do so. So you're watching the station. We'll be right back. Okay, very good. Guys, I wanted to cut that segment short so we can give ourselves more time to watch these videos. So we didn't do 25 minutes yet, but that's fine. This will give us about 35 for the next video, or for the next segment.
One thing on there we didn't talk as much about was some of the social issues, but certainly that'll be a part of it.
Yeah, exactly. So. Yeah, you'd almost say the school choice thing.
That puts people fired up.
Yeah, it really does. That's what motivates our base anyway. Right now, like school choice. I know a lot of people that are just taking their kids out of school, homeschooling, because they're just fed up with this stuff. They don't want their kids groomed to be LGBT activist, and so they're firing it. Yeah. Okay, guys, let me know when you're ready to go into the next segment.
We have 4 videos.
Okay.
By the way.
Okay. Reset. So how much time will we have total? About 16:03. 16:03. Okay, 32 minutes. So set it. All right, 32 minutes.
You want to do a timer instead of a stopwatch?
Didn't matter. Just either one. Okay. So we'll just count us in, and we'll jump into it, and then we'll just jump right into the different candidates' videos. Who's the first one up?
We can do any of these, but Cameron's the Trump-endorsed one.
He is. Okay.
Attorney General Cameron.
Would there be a front runner in this race, guys, at this point?
We have polling data, too. Cameron's at 46% in the primary.
Okay, well, let's talk about the polling data first. We'll
Okay.
we'll go to Evan first, talk about the polling data, and then we'll go through the videos. But let's tell the producers which video we're going to go to first. Do you know?
Cameron?
Okay, let's do Cameron.
He's the...
Okay, Will? Yeah, we're going to do Cameron first. Correct. Right, and we can jump around with the others, right? You don't need us to line them up like a playlist, do you? You'll be able to do that? Okay, great. Okay, great. So count us down, and we'll get this rolling. 8, 7, 6, 5. Welcome back to the station, Kentucky's conservative outpost, and we're talking about the governor's race and the 2023 governor's race in Kentucky. And so, obviously, we have Andy Beshear running for re-election, but there's basically a galaxy of Republican challengers that are going to be in the primary, trying to sort out who's going to run against them. And so this segment is going to be about who they are. Who are these candidates? And I think many of you will recognize some of these names. Some are in office now, in statewide office. Some are not. But it's going to be an interesting exploration of who these folks are. So, Evan, talk about the polling real quick. Well, first of all, how many candidates do we have in the primary? Is it 12, 14?
I believe it's 13,
13
as of right now.
folks.
Those are just Republicans.
13 Republicans running for the Republican primary. That's amazing. So let's talk about polling. Who's the top 5?
So in first place right now, there's been like one big poll, and it's by coefficient. And the 46% for Daniel Cameron. He's the candidate that has received the Trump endorsement.
Right.
If
Name
you wanna,
recognition. Yeah,
yeah.
that makes sense.
Also, undecided is at 22%, if you want to count that as a candidate. Then in second place, we have Ryan Quarles. He's at 9%.
Okay.
Savannah Maddox is at 7%. And then Mike Harmon is at 5%.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Well, we have two guests today. They're going to help us discuss this. Lee Watts from Patriot Point and Jim Waters from Bluegrass Institute. So, guys, after hearing those polls, that Cameron's got quite a lead. I guess it's just name recognition. Is that the reason, or is
name recognition is probably the key, most important thing in a campaign. And of course, he's been one of the leaders fighting Andy Bashir in the courts, and that has brought him a lot of attention. And of course, the position of Attorney General is also we call the AG is almost governor because they tend to run for it so often. And while he has got the Trump endorsement, and that will carry a lot of weight, it might be another governor's endorsement which might play big into this. And if one of the other candidates can get the endorsement of Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida, because a lot of people thinking he might run for president, and if so, he might be considered the front runner. If any of the candidates can get his endorsement, that can shake up everything. Wow. If Daniel Cameron is able to attain both the Trump and the DeSantis endorsement, I would think it would almost be locked up for him. Wow. I don't know the chances of that, and some of the others might be trying to quote the Governor DeSantis. I'm not sure if he's going to give an endorsement at all. But that's a key factor to consider. And even though Mr. Cameron has a lead today, we really haven't seen the candidates start running their ads. They have their ads on their website, but as of right now, they're in the cycle of gathering money. Once they start spending it, we see how their different messages start resonating. I think we're going to see a big shift in the numbers in the next few months.
Okay, good. Well said. Jim, are you still with us?
I am.
Okay, very. So what are your thoughts of that poll?
Well, I think it's just really early. I think, and primaries tend to be a low turnout. So with this many candidates in there and participating in the Republican primary, it's possible that 100,000 votes could win. Right. So, if you look at Commissioner Quarles, for example, he has done a great job of getting out in front in terms of getting local support at the local level. And I would not underestimate the impact of that in Kentucky. I was thinking about how Donald Trump came and held a rally for Matt Bevin in the final days of his campaign and couldn't push him over. I think the Trump endorsement certainly is interesting, and no Republican probably here would refuse to accept that. But I'm not sure at this point in time what that's worth, and it may be worth a lot. It may not be. We'll see. But I think I'm with Mr. Watts. I think we're going to see the numbers, shift around quite a bit. And that undecided, that's a huge number of undecided right now. Sure so candidates really have a chance to talk to those undecideds, and some of those candidates who didn't poll as well in the beginning may pick up with that on that.
Right. Well said. Yeah, and certainly the Trump.
I think,
go ahead. I was
going to say, right now under Kentucky's new law, the candidates don't have to choose a running mate. But as the numbers start following different directions, if we get some of these candidates teaming up, while they're not required to pick a running mate, they are not forbidden from doing that.
Right.
And if you can get 2 or 3 people that have got, I've got 12%, I've got 12%, I've got 20, you put those together, all of a sudden you're a front runner. Right. And I think that is highly likely the closer that we get to election.
Yeah, so some of the secondary candidates teaming up and then taking on Cameron. That's a very good thought. Well, good deal. And I was going to say about the Trump endorsement, it's certainly worth less than it was a month ago. It seems like Trump's star is fading just a bit, and I'm not a Trump partisan here. I'm very supportive of the former president, but there's something going on in the Republican Party right now, and DeSantis is definitely is all the buzz. So, okay, so let's move on to some of these videos. We have some campaign videos, I think, from Daniel Cameron first. Yeah. So let's play that, and we'll get everyone's reaction.
Days after his election, Abraham Lincoln wrote, "I fully appreciate the present peril the country is in and the weight of the responsibility on me. These are different times, but all of us conservatives feel a weight of responsibility right now. That's why I've decided to run for governor. Andy Beshear is not uniting Kentucky. This governor does not reflect our values. He's never going to change, so we have to change our governor. I'm Daniel Cameron. I grew up in E-Town, just up the road from here, surrounded by good people. My parents owned a coffee shop. They worked hard and insisted I work hard too. Mackenzie and I believe Kentucky needs a governor who uses common sense, one bold enough to defend innocent life, a governor who understands that only faith can keep us strong. Team Kentucky needs a new coach, one who will build us up, not divide us. I'm Daniel Cameron, and that's exactly the kind of governor I will be.
Probably shot before the election, the midterms, and so he emphasized the life issue quite a bit, and that's. I wonder if tactically he would change that, after the election. So who knows? I think he still should emphasize it, but with that second Amendment 2 failing, and also one more thing.
That's the only issue he specifically said anything about in that ad, though, was the life.
That's
issue.
right.
So
that's right. Right.
Everything else there was no other specific, issue.
Right.
Address there.
And that's still an important issue, especially in the primary for Republicans.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the obvious thing with Cameron is his story. I mean, he's a really interesting candidate just for who he is. I mean, obviously the African American heritage there is just unique. I mean, this could be the first African American, black governor of the state of Kentucky, a former quasi, Confederate state. Even though Kentucky never went to the South officially, it was. I think somebody said Kentucky joined the Confederacy after the Civil War. So that's an interesting thing, and I think if he wins the primary, that says a lot about this state and who we are. And so, and is also would that make an impact with voters who might take a second look at a Republican, say an African American voter in Louisville, for example. Would they take a second look at Daniel Cameron because of this? And what are your thoughts on that? Lee, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts?
I believe this will work to his advantage right now. With the environment right now, there's a lot of white people who want to prove that they are not a racist. And if there is an opportunity to vote for someone who is a conservative who is also black, I think that's an opportunity a lot of them will take. So I'm not saying that's necessarily a good thing, because voting for someone because of their skin color is also racism. You should vote for someone because of the principles that they stand for or the things they are standing against. But in the current climate, being a black conservative is a great advantage for Mr. Cameron. And he is not leveraging that. And I think that is wise for his point, because it would come off the wrong way.
Right.
But I think it is something that will work to his advantage. And I think it is also good for the Republican Party to show, listen, the Republican Party is not the racist group that we have been smeared to be. The Republican Party is made up of black people, Hispanic people, people of all different races. And it is not the white-only group that the Democrats try to portray it as. And we really lose sometimes in the conversation. The origins of the Republican Party was to bring freedom to black people. And it was the Democratic Party that was fighting against that. And it's about time that that message be reemphasized.
Yeah, well said, well said. And you're right, Cameron historically has never sort of made that an issue or sort of wore that his heritage on his sleeve, and so it's almost incidental to who he is in a lot of ways. So that's a great thing, and that's because it's all about him being a good candidate and a good office holder, and he certainly is. So, Jim, what are your thoughts?
I think that's good, but I think it needs to be coupled, and hopefully it'll be coupled with some specific policy prescriptions for Kentucky. What is it that we're facing, our challenges, and not try to avoid that. Voters have a sixth sense when it comes to, I think, when it comes to candidates who try to avoid the tough issues. And so I think it's better to just take them head on. You're never going to, a conservative Republican in Kentucky, for example, is never going to get the teachers union's votes,
Right.
but he might get some teachers' votes, so that's the difference. So, speak to the issues. Don't be afraid to, take stands and and really talk about your principles and the policies, and address the specific issues. Don't try to avoid them. And I think if he does that, and not, as you all made a great point about, not making race the issue, and I think people appreciate that, and I do think it's a indication of the progress we've made as a Commonwealth and a country. And whether you like Barack Obama or not, I mean, this country's elected a black president, and we might elect a black governor here. So I think that's good, and I think it says to young black children and young people that you don't have to be a liberal progressive and buy into all the welfare policies and all that in order to be successful as an African American. You can win, be a conservative, and have strong conservative principles, and be a credit to your people and your race. I think that's fine. I think that's great.
That's a beautiful thing.
We saw that a lot with our former Lieutenant Governor, Janine Hampton.
Exactly.
First black Lieutenant Governor we've had, a very conservative lady, came from a very liberal background, and just realized the propaganda that had been pushed on her, and realized the Republican Party and those conservative values are the ones that she really believed in. And we believed in it so much, we elected her as Lieutenant Governor.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons that Bevin had trouble in some areas, Governor Bevin lost Warren County, and I think one of the reasons is he should never have lost Warren County, but one of the reasons is because of the way he handled that whole situation with the Lieutenant Governor. I mean, it's just handled very poorly, I think. So, I totally agree. And to have, Lieutenant Governor Hampton was the first statewide elected black that we've had here, and she was a highly qualified candidate. She has a multiple background, manufacturing, in the armed forces. Just a terrific representative for our state. So,
but you alluded that Cameron may be hesitant to stand up on tough issues, and is that your perspective, or?
I think it still remains to be seen, and I think,
but has he done that as Attorney General? I mean, he's an Attorney General now. He's holding, so has he taken some strong stances against the governor, against? So what?
Yeah, well, he certainly has. Like Lee said, he has been involved in confronting the governor. So yeah, I'm just saying, during a political campaign for governor, there are some issues that will come up that also will need to be addressed. So right. I'm not in any way saying he hasn't done that. I just think that it remains to be seen in a gubernatorial race what the issues are what issues are really going to be the priority issues here. And I think being prepared to confront those and take a stand, which I'm sure he will be important. That's all I'm saying. That'll be important.
Absolutely.
So,
okay. Very
tagging on to that, that's something to consider when we're watching the other videos coming up. Is something that Mr. Waters hit on. It's vitally important. Is that we as Republicans, we're going to pay attention to these commercials. Is it just fluff, or actually are you taking a stand and making a priority different specific issues which are important to us? I did a program on Patriot Point a month or so ago talking about some of the candidates, and you could run their commercial as a Republican, a Democrat, a Libertarian, Independent, anybody, because they didn't mention any programs. They just said, well, I'm for Kentucky. Well, everybody and their dog would say that. I want to know where you stand on specific issues, and so does my dog.
That's right. Exactly right. Well, let's look at some other candidates and see if they're talking about the issues. So who do we have next?
We have Kelly Craft.
She's
a former ambassador to the UN in Canada.
Okay, let's watch that.
It is so good to be back home in Glasgow, Kentucky. There is no other place I'd rather be to kick off this campaign. It is such an indescribable feeling to see so many of my friends, my teachers, and my family. And tonight, our movement begins. I'm Kelly Craft. I'm a Christian, a conservative, and a proud Kentuckian. We have been hit by natural disasters and the Democrat-made disasters of lockdowns, inflation, crime, and drugs. Well, I'm here to tell you That is unacceptable. And as your governor, I will not stand for it. And I'm unapologetic about being pro-life, defending our veterans, and defending our Second Amendment. I will stand up and I will fight for you. I'll meet Kentuckians at their kitchen tables, and I'll bring the values and concerns to the forefront of this campaign. It's time to bring strong conservative leadership back to Frankfort. In our courage, our faith, our relentless optimism, I see the bright future of our Commonwealth. It's time to restore the promise of Kentucky.
Produce spots. So Kelly Craft. So she is a former teacher, a mother, has some experience in government as an ambassador. That's fascinating. Looks like she's very culturally conservative. She's bringing up a lot of issues that are hot buttons right now with those that are concerned about cultural issues, social issues. Was something that jumped out to me was the Democrat-made disasters. Because Beshear obviously did a great job, responding to the tornadoes and the flooding and the disasters. He's got a lot of press about that, a lot of airtime about that, and he's seen as handling that in a way that was seen as competent. But there's Democrat-made disasters. What are those Democrat-made disasters? Lee, what are those?
I think, first of all, is the problem we're having with the invasion on the southern border. And we're seeing there's been plane loads of different immigrants have been flown into Kentucky. That's one of the Democrat-made disasters. I think another one is something that really goes in the face of our motto, United We Stand, is the division that is being taught now through critical race theory and through its different names. That is a Democrat idea, and it is pushing this idea of division instead of unity. And I think those are the things that are Democrat-made disasters that conservatives can say, listen, we used to be the melting pot, a United States instead of a divided into every little group state.
That's right.
And the more that somebody can hone in on that, I think that will resonate a lot, especially in the primary with the conservatives. And she hit the things that you need to hit, the two big ones, pro-life and pro-Second Amendment. Every single one of them better hit that. But that's kind of a starting point, and I'm looking for a little more detail on whoever I'm going to support, which I have not decided.
Yeah, well said. Jim, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's early too. These are kind of rollout commercials, and spots. So let's just have the right perspective on this, where we are in time. Now, if you're still talking so generally, 6 months from now, that's a problem, right? But
these introduction
but
spots,
right now, I think it's, I think we need to allow the candidates, they want to introduce themselves. That's what they're doing right now. And Kelly Craft, actually, she mentioned inflation, crime, and drugs there. So there wasn't any specific solutions, but she did mention several different issues. So again, and I think that's what Attorney General Cameron was doing. He's introducing himself. People know he has more name recognition than anyone in the race, but he wants people to know his story, and so he took advantage of sort of this time to do that. So I think that's good. People do want to know who their candidates are as well as what their positions are. So, and especially in Kentucky, I think that does matter here, maybe more than it might some other places in the country. But I think here, culturally, we're very much about family and where are you from and what's your background. And so, I think that's good. I think the candidates are doing a good job of doing that. So
yeah. In Louisville, they want to know what school you went to, and that means which high school you went to. It's not what college, but high school. So who's our next candidate, Devin?
Savannah
Jeff Brom went to Trinity, by the way. So he's the new U of L coach. So.
That's right. Exactly. That's cool. Who is it again? Savannah Maddox. Savannah Maddox. Here we go.
Over the past few years in Kentucky, we've seen a governor who has put himself before everybody else. Andy Beshear has trampled on our constitutional rights and freedoms. He has damaged Kentucky's economy and kept our students out of the classroom. And he has even infringed upon the right to practice our Christian faith. We remember Beshear's lockdowns and mandates, and we wonder how this could have happened in America. It's not leadership, it's tyranny. From day one, I fought back, organizing, protesting, legislating, anything I could do. Some Kentucky Republicans were cheering on Beshear while I fought him every step of the way. To me, that's unconscionable and completely disqualifying in a Republican candidate, but especially among those who want to run for governor. Just admit that you're actually a Democrat and go run in the primary in their party, because these are basic conservative principles that we're standing up to defend. We believe in fighting for freedom and preserving individual liberty. We believe in law and order and fully funding our police. We believe in the right for parents to have a say in their children's education. We believe in the Second Amendment and the right to life. Kentuckians have an amazing spirit. They are proud of our Commonwealth. They get up every morning and they work hard. We shouldn't rob our families with an income tax. It's a relic from when liberals held this state hostage. Florida doesn't have an income tax. Heck, Tennessee doesn't even have an income tax. Let's eliminate it in Kentucky and let our economy grow and our families prosper. I'm a sixth-generation Kentuckian. I'm a wife, a mother of 2 amazing children, and above all, I'm a Christian. I'm unabashedly a supporter of President Donald Trump. He brought strength back to the Oval Office and energized places like Kentucky. He brought people out to the polls who had never voted before. And I was one of few across the nation that he personally endorsed to serve in the legislature. We need that strength and energy right now more than ever. I am running for governor to fight for every Kentuckian, to put the people first, including the people in this state who have been shunned by the elites and by Andy Beshear. And they've been told that they don't matter. But our Republican Party is not the party of the elite. It's the party of the people. Every single day, I will get up and work to defend our freedoms and protect our constitutional and God-given rights. Please join me. Let's take back our Commonwealth.
Fighter. That's interesting. So, what is her background again? Is she a whole office now?
She's a state representative.
State rep. Okay, state rep. Savannah Maddox. That was a nice piece there, and really going after the governor. I mean, she's saying Andy Beshear is bringing tyranny to this state. So I'm really curious to hear Lee's thoughts on that. But I'm gonna go to Jim first. Jim, what do you think, Savannah Maddox?
Well, I think she has made a lot of right moves in terms of being I would say, the most conservative candidate in the race. She got out there early. She's raised some money, and she's tapped into, I think, maybe what we saw with the Bevin vote before. I think she'll attract some of the, folks who were staunchly supportive of Governor Bevin and kind of his base. And, she talked about some specifics there about getting rid of the income tax. And, we've made some progress on that. I think that ad was made some time ago before the legislature actually voted to begin removing the state's individual income tax. In fact, one of the first bills that will be voted on in this session will be to drop the individual income tax rate to 4%. So we're moving in that direction. And it's because of people like her and the work she's done in the legislature. It's interesting because she started out really pretty hard hitting in that ad, which will appeal to folks who are opposed to Beshear. That will really speak to them. And I think that's a good example of, hey, I'm never going to get everybody's vote. Here's the group I want to go after and win their vote. And so she really hit it hard from the beginning. And then she talked a little bit about herself and her background. So it was a little bit of a different approach, but still in there was, I'm a sixth-generation Kentuckian. That's important here. So, that's right. So good. I think she's an interesting candidate. I think she's gonna, I think it'll be. She's made a lot of right decisions from my perspective.
Yeah, well said. Very, very good summary. Lee, tyranny.
Well, it's just like Jim said. She comes out in her ad. This is a very smart ad. When I was in the military, my job was media relations. And I've got to say, she did her homework on this ad because she's appealing to, because remember, you're not doing the general election ad right now. You're appealing to the Republicans. And so she reminds them, hey, let's not have short-term memory loss. These are all the things that Andy Pandy did to you. And then she comes out, and I have to agree with Mr. Waters again. Overall, she is the most conservative candidate in the race. And this ad, it does what I was mentioning earlier. It hits those things that you have to hit as a Republican. I'm pro-life, I'm pro-Second Amendment. But then it does the other things that I was talking about. She hits specific issues. She hits the income tax. We need to get rid of that. She hits parental rights, which is a huge issue among conservatives and growing a bunch more in the recent year. So she hits a lot of, she says, talking about fully funding our police, letting you know her position on that. So she hits some specific issues. And I've given her a little nickname. I call Miss Maddox Firecracker. And she definitely is. Whether you like her or dislike her, you will know where she stands on the issues. And that brings some respect from my point. So I think that she has been able to raise a significant amount of money. She's not the biggest fundraiser, but I think that she is going to be a strong contender in this race.
Yeah, and she basically wrapped herself in that Donald Trump flag too throughout that spot.
Yeah.
So whether he gets the endorsement or not, she's endorsing him.
Now the key for a candidate like this is to be able in the general election, if they do win, to be able to speak to a bigger audience. And I think that might be the challenge she would have. Whereas I think Attorney General Cameron would do real well if he gets the nomination with that. So he'll speak to, a bigger group. So I think I'm not saying it can't happen. It can. We saw it with Governor Bevin. He was a very conservative candidate, and he did a good job of, in both the primary, speaking to the base, and then in the general election, tapping into concerns of a wider audience.
Right. Maybe she can be the female Bevin. Let's go to the next candidate. We have about 4 minutes left in this segment. So who's next?
Final video is Ryan Quarles.
Ryan Quarles.
I'm Ryan Quarles, Kentucky Commissioner of Agriculture and Republican candidate for governor in 2023. Our families are struggling. Inflation's at an all-time high. Crime is on the rise in our cities. Reckless mandates kept our children out of school, and family-owned businesses were unfairly shut down while big businesses stayed open. And now, sadly, some moms and pops are gone forever. Police were even ordered to our churches on Easter Sunday. You don't need me telling you this. You lived through it, just like I did. You see it every day at the grocery store, at the gas pump, in never-ending emails sent home from your child's school. Joe Biden and Andy Beshear have lectured us daily on what to do and what we can't do, and tied our hands from making the best decisions for ourselves and our families. American liberty was carelessly cast aside. From the coal mines of East Kentucky to the streets of Louisville to the cornfields of Western Kentucky, no area of the Commonwealth has been spared from the disastrous policies of their liberal agendas. And I've been on the front lines, fighting the Beshear and Biden agendas, and I know how their false promises have failed everyday Kentuckians. It's not been easy for us, but I know I have the proven experience to lead our Commonwealth to brighter days. Let me help Kentucky the way I know how, by working together. I know how to make government work and bring people together from all sides. I'll be a governor who backs our law enforcement, is tough on crime, and fights for common sense solutions. In my administration, we shrank the size of government, cut costs, grew our economy, and provided help for the hungry. With record high inflation, growing crime rates, and partisanship in Frankfurt, you better believe I'll be a governor that unites our state and brings us together, because that's the Kentucky that I know. And it all starts now. In the coming weeks, I'll be sharing my vision, and on June 1st in my hometown, we'll be kicking off the campaign formally together. I'd like to invite you to come and be part of this journey in Georgetown, Kentucky, where it all began for me years ago. Be on the lookout on social media and other sources in the coming weeks for details. You can also visit my website, ryanquarles.com. I'm Ryan Quarles, and I look forward to seeing you on June 1st, Kentucky's birthday.
Okay, Brian Quarles, we had to cut that short because the show is running a little bit long. So, mandates. He talked about mandates that the governor Bashir was implementing during the COVID lockdowns. It's the first time I've heard a candidate mention crime, crime issue, and so some issues that are unique to him. What is Quarles' background again? He's currently this ag commissioner, right? Is that his current office?
He's
Commissioner of
formerly a
Agriculture.
state representative. Yeah.
Okay, former state representative, and okay, very good. I think he's the current ag commissioner. But there you go. So, and we have short segments to make this quick. So, Lee, what are your quick thoughts on Ryan Quarles?
I think overall, Commissioner Quarles has the strongest statewide ground game. That's where his strength is, and I think he's playing to that. And I think it's going to be a bigger factor than it's showing up here at the beginning. He hit something which is huge. I mentioned tying together Bashir and Biden on their mandates. So I think he's playing it very wisely. And when you hear him speak in person, he comes across as very gubernatorial and will be an extremely strong candidate.
Interesting. Jim, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think he mentioned, the wedge between big business and small business. He mentioned how Bashir favored big business with his mandates, and that small businesses were left behind. So that's a point. If I was advising him, I would say keep hammering away on that point, because I think that'll matter to Kentuckians. And he was, I think, maybe the only candidate who referred to Biden in his spot. But to the extent that he can make that work, that may help him. He's going to be a formidable candidate, I think, as well. And I agree with Lee in terms of the ground game. And, people in Kentucky like it when you come and see them in their communities, in their towns. And when it comes time to actually cast that vote, I think that will matter.
That's well said. The fundraising is kind of interesting. I'm looking at some notes here that, let's see, Kraft has raised about $752,000. Cameron has raised about $408, but he has $608 on hand. So he's got $1 million in his war chest there. Quarles has a bit more. It's like $1.2 million in his war chest. So could be a pretty interesting primary. You might see a few commercials on the air for this primary. Now there are some other candidates running. Let's run through a quick list of the others in order. And so, do you ever give that?
Yeah, I have that. So there's David Cooper, who's in the National Guard. Eric Dieters, he's a former attorney. Don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Robert DeVore, he's a former McCreary County School Board member. Mike Harmon, he's a state auditor. Alan Keck, mayor of Somerset. Anthony Moore, well-water drilling contractor. Johnny Rice, militia activist and former police officer, and then Robbie Smith, who's a high school teacher.
Yeah, we didn't want to shortchange any of these folks. Well, we want to start with the top four as it came to polling. But any thoughts on these other candidates?
I would just say, there's a big difference in Auditor Harmon and some of the other names on that list. I mean, the auditor surprised a lot of people when he won his auditor's race. I think, again, he could certainly play a role as Mr. Watts mentioned earlier about being possibly lieutenant governor candidate as well and helping a ticket. So he's got a lot of experience, and he's got state government experience. He's got business background, and he's got the background of being the state auditor running that office. So I think he's
one to watch. And
he's one of the most likable candidates. I know that. So.
Right.
I would have to echo Mr. Waters' sentiments. I totally agree. He's not only the state auditor, he's in that position. He's taken Andy Bashir to task quite directly many times. Before that, he was a state representative for years. And then he's a small business owner. So he has a great deal of experience. Mr. Harmon is a very likable kind of fella, and would probably be a wise choice as a lieutenant governor running mate. He has raised some money. And I don't think we've seen the last of him. Even if he's not picked up as a running mate, it would not surprise me if he does not become part of the administration for the Republican government.
Well said. Well, very good. Well, this is it for this show. This is going to be a fascinating race, gentlemen. This primary going into the spring. Do we know the primary date yet? Is it May? Typically, it's in April, May.
Yes.
Okay.
It's the
November
second
7th.
Tuesday in May, I believe.
Second Tuesday of May. Okay, very good. So we'll have a lot of time between now and then to
November
learn.
7th, 2023 is the actual race.
And November 7th, obviously, is the first. Okay, so we have a lot of time to learn more about these candidates. So thanks for tuning in tonight. I hope you learned something. I know I did. We have a fascinating governor's race upon us. So you're watching the station, Kentucky's Conservative Outpost. I want to thank Lee Watts for appearing. You can see his commentary on his channel, the Patriot Point. So go on YouTube, check it out. It's some of the best commentary being done in this state. And Jim Waters of the Bluegrass Institute, he writes, he publishes, he co-hosts, he does everything in media. And appreciate you
Read
guys
my
being on.
weekly column. My weekly column
weekly
in the
column.
newspapers around the state.
Yes, it's always well done. And so, yeah, please read that, and we'll see you next week.